My name is Sloane and I am 34 years old. At our Thanksgiving dinner, my father stood up, pointed a shaking finger at my 7-year-old son, and screamed at us to get out of his house. My family called me a disgraceful, broke single mother who ruined her life. I did not scream back or beg for forgiveness. I just picked up my phone, texted 2 words to my wealth manager, and walked out. They had absolutely no idea they were sitting in a mansion I secretly owned, eating food paid for by a corporate card I issued from my $150 million private equity firm. By the time they woke up on Black Friday, their fake reality would be completely erased. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to stand up to family who underestimated your worth and treated you like a burden. Growing up in our affluent Connecticut suburb image was the only currency my parents valued. My father Harrison and my mother Carolyn built a local real estate business they treated like a royal kingdom. When my ex-husband Travis walked out on me during my pregnancy 7 years ago, my parents treated me like a radioactive disappointment. They worshipped Travis because he came from generational wealth. They despised me because I did not fight to keep a toxic man in my life. Instead of begging him to stay, I took my unborn child and walked away to build an artificial intelligence platform from my cramped kitchen table. 2 months ago, I sold that platform for $150 million, established my own private equity firm called Apex Holdings, and kept my name entirely off the public radar. Why the secrecy? Because 3 years ago, my father bankrupted his precious real estate company. He was drowning in massive debt, about to lose his luxury cars and his country club membership. Through my anonymous holding company, I bought his failing business, paid his debts, and retained him as a puppet chief executive officer just to keep a roof over my mother. I issued corporate black cards to my parents and my younger sister Brittany, letting them believe some faceless corporate overlord had saved them. I thought family deserved a safety net, but this Thanksgiving dinner proved that giving them a safety net only gave them the confidence to kick me into the abyss. The evening started with sheer humiliation. While my parents, my sister Brittany and her husband DeAndre, sat at the massive mahogany dining table, my mother pointed me to a plastic folding table crammed in the corner of the room. "We just do not have enough space this year, Sloane," my mother Carolyn said, adjusting the diamond necklace my company had unknowingly paid for. "Besides, Leo is so messy when he eats. It is better if you two stay over there out of the way." I swallowed my pride for my son Leo. I was wearing a simple, unbranded sweater and drove up in a 10-year-old Honda Civic. I lived quietly by choice, but to my family, my modesty was absolute proof of my total failure. "Did you really have to park that junk heap of a Honda in the driveway?" my father Harrison barked loudly while carving the turkey. "The neighbors can see it from the street. It brings down the entire property value." "It gets me from point A to point B safely, Dad," I said quietly, cutting a small piece of turkey for Leo. Brittany scoffed loudly, swirling her expensive champagne. At 30 years old, she was a full-time social media influencer who had not worked a real day in her life. "If you had not let Travis kick you to the curb, you would not be shopping at discount stores and eating our turkey, Sloane," she sneered. "Look at this." She dramatically pulled a sleek metal black card out of her designer purse and slapped it right onto the dining table. "The parent company just increased my spending limit. $30,000 a month. That is what happens when you actually have value to a corporation." I stared at the card resting on the table. My card. Issued by my holding company. DeAndre frowned deeply. At 32, he was a former professional athlete, a grounded African-American man who always seemed entirely out of place in my family's circus of vanity. "Brittany, we talked about this," DeAndre said, his deep voice carrying a strict warning. "You do not need to be flashing corporate credit lines at the dinner table. And you definitely do not need to be disrespecting your older sister like that." "Oh, relax, DeAndre," my mother Carolyn chimed in, waving her wine glass dismissively. "Brittany is just being honest. Sloane needs a harsh reality check. Travis is doing incredibly well, by the way. His startup company is about to secure a massive round of venture capital funding. We actually had lunch with him at the club last week. My own mother was having lunch with the man who abandoned my son." The betrayal stung sharply in my chest, but I kept my face completely blank. That is nice for him, I said evenly. It could have been nice for you, my father. Harrison screamed, suddenly slamming his fist on the table. But you are weak. You have always been weak. You are nothing but a massive drain on this family reputation. Startled by my father shouting, Leo jumped. His elbow clipped his plastic cup. Red wine splashed across the floor, grazing the Persian rug. Harrison shot up his chair, crashing down. You clumsy brat, he roared, pointing at my terrified son. Get out of my house right now. I stood. I pulled out my phone and messaged my executive team. Execute Protocol 0. All right, I said calmly. We are leaving. Black Friday arrived with waves crashing outside my Honolulu bedroom. Leo slept deeply safe from the storm I unleashed. I sat on the balcony with coffee and my laptop. It was morning in the States. My screen illuminated. Legal confirmed Protocol 0 was fully executed. All corporate cards tied to my family were declined. Business accounts were frozen. Operational funds were suspended. Incoming calls began immediately. Mother called. Decline. Father called. Decline. Rapid-fire texts from Brittany flooded in. Sloan, did you steal my credit card information? My card got declined at the designer store. This is fraud. I am calling the local police. I laughed out loud. Believing I hacked her corporate limit was astounding delusion. I did not reply. I wanted them to sweat. 10 minutes later, DeAndre called. I respected him. His sports background taught him hard work before injury forced early retirement. I answered. Sloan, are you okay? His deep voice laced with concern. What Harrison did was out of line. I told Brittany I wanted to leave after you did, but she threw a fit. We are fine, DeAndre, I said. We are in Hawaii. Honolulu, he asked. Listen, something insane is happening. Brittany is having a massive meltdown inside a boutique. Her corporate card got declined for a $30,000 transaction. She is screaming at the clerks. Harrison had his card rejected at the gas station. Carolyn had her spa membership revoked. Harrison is losing his mind trying to call the holding company. I know, I said, sipping my coffee. I froze them. Dead silence fell on the line. You froze them? DeAndre asked in a harsh whisper. Sloan, what are you talking about? Those are corporate credit lines from Apex Holdings. DeAndre, I am Apex Holdings. I could hear his breath hitch. You are joking. 3 years ago, when Harrison bankrupted his company, I bought it through an anonymous shell corporation. I paid off his bad debts, gave them allowances, and let him pretend he was still the boss. I funded their lifestyle with money from selling my artificial intelligence platform. But after last night, I am done playing the silent benefactor. My God, DeAndre muttered. The pieces were rapidly falling into place. The luxury cars, the renovations, the vacations, all funded by the disgraceful single mother I finished for him. Sloan, there is something you need to know, DeAndre said, his tone shifting to sharp anger. Brittany has been telling me for 2 years that her family wealth was generational. When my sports investments took a hit last year, she started putting everything on credit cards in my name, claiming her trust fund would clear the balance. She has no trust fund, DeAndre, I said. She has nothing. I suggest you check your personal credit reports immediately. I need to go, DeAndre said, his voice dangerously quiet. Enjoy Hawaii, Sloan. He hung up. The first domino had just fallen. Brittany's fake empire was collapsing, and the husband she financially manipulated for years was about to drop the hammer. A few hours later, the second domino fell. An email popped up on my screen. It was from Harrison. He bypassed my personal email and used my corporate address, sending a frantic message to the board of directors at Apex Holdings. To the board of Apex Holdings. There has been a catastrophic error with our accounts. All company cards are frozen and operational funds are blocked. I demand an immediate explanation. As Chief Executive Officer of this subsidiary, I require immediate contact with the Managing Director. I smiled, my fingers flying across the keyboard. I replied directly from my executive email, ensuring my full name and title were displayed. Dear Harrison, there is no error. Your corporate cards were frozen due to gross financial mismanagement and unprofessional conduct. Furthermore, effective immediately. Your position as Chief Executive Officer of the subsidiary is terminated. Please vacate the corporate premises by Monday morning. Legal documents regarding cessation of your employment and revocation of all company-issued assets have been forwarded to your residence. Best regards, Sloan Managing Director and Sole Proprietor, Apex Holdings. I hit send. The arrogant patriarch who screamed at my 7-year-old son and kicked me out had just been brutally fired by the daughter he despised. The peaceful sound of the Hawaiian breeze was violently interrupted when my cell phone started ringing. It was Harrison. He did not text or email back. He called. I let the phone ring 3 times before I swiped the button to answer. Sloan, he bellowed, his voice so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. What kind of sick, twisted joke is this? Are you hacking my company emails? Are you trying to ruin me? It is not a joke, Dad, I said. I own the company. I own your debts. I own the chair you are sitting on right now. And you are officially fired. You lying little brat, he sputtered, choking on his own rage. You work from a cheap folding table. You drive a garbage car. You are a broke, pathetic single mother. I drove that car because I did not need to flaunt wealth to feel valuable. I sold my artificial intelligence platform for $150 million, Dad. I bought your bankrupt excuse for a real estate firm just to keep you off the streets. But you made it very clear last night that I do not belong at your table. So I took my table back. The corporate cards are dead. The cars are leased under my company, and they will be repossessed on Monday. Have a truly great Black Friday. I hung up the phone and blocked his number. The power dynamic had not just shifted, it had been entirely obliterated in a matter of seconds. I was no longer the victim of their systemic emotional abuse. I was their judge, their jury, and their absolute, undeniable financial executioner now. The aftermath of my phone call with Harrison was a beautiful and deafening silence. But a wounded animal does not just accept its fate gracefully, it thrashes blindly. My phone lit up again with an unknown number. Harrison was using a different line. I let it go straight to voicemail. 2 minutes later, the audio transcript hit my screen. You are bluffing, Sloan, his voice screamed through the digital text. You do not have $150 million. You are a liar trying to extort us. I am calling the authorities and having you arrested for corporate espionage. I deleted the message instantly. His denial was pathological. He simply could not process that the daughter he so easily discarded was the architect of his entire financial existence. I closed my laptop and walked out to the balcony. The Pacific Ocean sparkled under the midday sun. Leo was building a massive sandcastle on the private beach below, laughing with the property manager kids. He was completely detached from the toxic environment that had suffocated us for 7 years. Seeing him smile validated every ruthless decision I had made in the last 12 hours. While I enjoyed the Hawaiian breeze, chaos was unfolding thousands of miles away at the prestigious Golden Lotus Spa. My mother Carolyn had booked a full day of luxury treatments to recover from the stress of hosting Thanksgiving dinner. She was entirely oblivious to the financial guillotine that had just severed her lifeline. According to the panicked voicemails she started leaving on my secondary business line, the morning had been a complete disaster. I poured myself a glass of iced water and listened to her unravel. Carolyn had finished a $200 hot stone massage, a custom facial, and a premium caviar skin treatment. She walked to the marble front desk, wearing her plush designer robe, exuding the arrogance of a woman who believed she owned the world. She handed her corporate black card to the receptionist without even looking at the final bill. The machine beeped a harsh, unforgiving tone. Declined. Carolyn demanded the receptionist run it again, claiming the machine must be broken. She scoffed loudly, ensuring the other wealthy patrons in the lobby knew this was a clerical error, not a personal failing. The receptionist swiped it a second time. Declined. Please use the chip. Carolyn snapped, her patience wearing thin. Do you know how much money I spend here every single month? The spa manager stepped in, speaking in hushed, apologetic tones. I am so sorry, Mrs. Carolyn, but the issuer has placed a hard freeze on this account. It says the card is permanently deactivated. Carolyn snatched the card back, her face flushing crimson. She dug into her designer handbag and pulled out her personal platinum card. It was a card tied directly to Harrison corporate expense account. She threw it on the marble counter. Run this one. The manager inserted the chip. Declined. Every single card in her wallet was linked to the Apex Holdings subsidiary. Every single lifeline was severed. The other women in the lobby stopped pretending to read their magazines. They were staring openly. Carolyn, the queen of the local social scene, was standing at the register, unable to pay for her luxury treatments. The humiliation was absolute. She was forced to leave her diamond earrings as collateral while she promised to go home and fetch cash. She ran to her Range Rover only to discover the fuel tank was nearly empty and her gas cards were equally useless. She called me from the spa parking lot. I answered this time, putting the phone on speaker as I watched the waves. Sloane, she shrieked, her voice shrill with pure panic. Your father is tearing the house apart. The bank called and said all our accounts are locked. Brittany is crying upstairs because her cards are dead. What did you do? Fix this right now. I am not fixing anything, Mom, I said smoothly. You all made your choices last night. You sat there and watched Harrison scream at a 7-year-old boy. You agreed when Brittany called me a disgraceful burden. You threw me out like garbage, so I took out the trash. You cannot do this, Carolyn sobbed. I had to leave my earrings at the spa. The manager looked at me like I was a beggar. I am humiliated. We are a respectable family, Sloane. Stop this ridiculous prank and turn the money back on. It is not a prank, I replied, keeping my voice completely devoid of emotion. I own Apex Holdings. I sold my artificial intelligence company for $150 million. I bought Harrison bankrupt business 3 years ago to keep you from living in a motel. I paid for the turkey you ate last night. I paid for the chandelier hanging over your dining table. And I am the one who just turned the faucet off. You are lying. Carolyn gasped, her denial mirroring Harrison. You are a broke single mother. You work from a kitchen table. You do not have that kind of money. Check your inbox, Mom, I said. I just forwarded you the official acquisition documents from the tech conglomerate, along with the ownership deeds for the house you are currently standing in. Read them carefully, then pack your bags. You and Harrison have until Monday morning to vacate the property. Apex Holdings is putting the estate up for sale. No, Carolyn wailed, the reality finally shattering her delusion. Sloane, please. We are your family. You cannot put your own mother on the street. I am your flesh and blood. Blood does not give you a free pass to abuse me, I said coldly. You loved the money, but you hated the daughter providing it. Now you have neither. I hung up the phone. I blocked her number immediately, leaving her to face the harsh consequences of her cruelty, entirely alone on the pavement. My phone vibrated violently against the glass table. It was a FaceTime audio call from DeAndre. I answered immediately, hearing heavy, angry footsteps echoing over the line. Sloane, I need you on the line for this. DeAndre said, his deep voice vibrating with a cold fury I had never heard from him before. I just pulled my credit reports like you advised. I am walking into the master bedroom right now. Do not say a single word. Just listen to everything. I want a solid witness to this exact conversation. I muted my microphone and listened intently. The sound of a heavy wooden door swinging open echoed through the speaker. Brittany was sobbing loudly. It was not her usual performative crying for social media sympathy. It was the raw, panicked wailing of a woman whose fake reality had just evaporated completely into thin air. DeAndre, she gasped, her voice thick with panic. My corporate card is completely dead. The bank told me the account does not even exist anymore. Harrison is not answering my frantic texts, and Carolyn is having a massive panic attack at the luxury spa. You need to give me your platinum card right now so I can pay my stylist for today. There was a sharp thud as DeAndre threw a heavy stack of printed papers onto their expensive marble vanity. I do not have a platinum card, Brittany, he said, his tone chillingly calm. But apparently I have 3 secret credit accounts maxed out to the absolute limit. Care to explain why I have $100,000 of high-interest debt in my name for luxury resorts in the Maldives, designer handbags, and daily fine dining charges at 5-star restaurants? The crying stopped instantly. The silence that followed was incredibly heavy with undeniable guilt. DeAndre, I can explain. she stammered, her voice dropping to a nervous whisper. It is just a temporary cash flow issue. My trust fund pays out next quarter and I was going to pay it all off before you even noticed anything was missing. We are a team, right? You do not have a trust fund, Brittany, DeAndre roared, his voice shaking the walls of the condo. Sloan told me everything. Your entire life is a disgusting lie. Your father is bankrupt. Your mother is completely broke. Your corporate allowance was charity from the sister you spent last night treating like absolute garbage. You have been stealing my identity to fund your fake influencer lifestyle for years. That is a lie, Brittany shrieked, desperately clinging to her crumbling facade. Sloane is a broke single mother. She is insanely jealous of me. She is trying to ruin my perfect marriage because her own husband dumped her for someone better. DeAndre let out a harsh, humorless laugh. Sloane sold her tech company for $150 million, Brittany. She owns the company that was paying your bills, she owns the house your parents live in, and she just cut you all off because you are toxic, ungrateful parasites. But that is not even the worst part. The worst part is that you looked me in the eye every single day and lied to my face while draining my financial future. I heard the loud sound of a zipper being pulled aggressively. DeAndre, what are you doing? Brittany cried out, sheer panic fully setting in. Why are you pulling out your suitcases? I am packing my things, he stated flatly. I am leaving you today. No, you cannot leave me, she begged, her voice pitching into a hysterical scream. My millions of followers think we are the perfect couple. I have massive brand deals lined up that require both of us to make appearances. If you walk out on me today, my engagement metrics will tank instantly. You are ruining my personal brand. Your brand, DeAndre shouted. You committed serious identity theft against your own husband. You forged my signature on financial documents to buy expensive shoes. I am going straight to the police station to file a massive fraud report. Then I am calling my lawyer to draft divorce papers. You are going to face felony charges for this, Brittany. Please, DeAndre, she sobbed, dropping to her knees. The sound of her desperate pleading echoed clearly through the phone. I will do anything. I will get a real job. I will sell all the bags. Just do not go to the cops. If I get arrested, my entire social media career is over forever. Everyone will know I am a total fraud. They are going to know anyway, he fired back fiercely. Because the luxury cars are being repossessed tomorrow morning. Your parents are being evicted on Monday. And you are going to be standing in a courtroom explaining to a judge how you managed to steal $100,000 from a retired athlete just to impress a bunch of strangers on the internet. I listened closely as DeAndre zipped up his heavy duffel bag. The heavy thud of his boots moved toward the bedroom door. Brittany was wailing, begging him to stay, promising she could change her toxic ways. But DeAndre was completely done. He had spent years dealing with her shallow vanity, truly believing her family was just eccentric and overly privileged. Finding out they were broke frauds who funded their immense arrogance through my hidden charity and his stolen credit was the final nail in the coffin. I will see you in court, Brittany. DeAndre said, his voice dropping to a deadly whisper. Do not try to contact me. Any communication goes directly through my legal team from now on. The bedroom door slammed shut, cutting off Brittany and her hysterical screaming. DeAndre hurried out the front door. He picked up his phone. I am officially done, Sloane, he said. I am officially done, Sloane, he said. Good luck, DeAndre, I replied softly. You deserve so much better than the fraud you married. Let your legal team handle the rest, and do not look back. I ended the call and set my phone face down on the pristine glass table. The tropical breeze swept across the balcony carrying the sweet scent of plumeria flowers. My family was tearing themselves apart, choking on the toxic ashes of their own deliberate creation. I had stripped away the unearned privilege that fueled their arrogance, and they were instantly eating each other alive. I took a deep breath, letting the absolute peace of my Honolulu sanctuary wash over me. I genuinely thought the worst was finally over. I thought excising my father, my mother, and my sister was the final necessary step to protecting my hard-earned peace. But a dying parasite will always try to latch onto a new host to survive, and my father was the ultimate, relentless parasite. 24 hours passed in blissful, uninterrupted silence. By Sunday afternoon, I was sitting comfortably on the expansive marble terrace overlooking the ocean, watching my son Leo run along the shoreline with his new friends. My iced tea rested on the table next to a thick stack of financial reports I was casually reviewing for Apex Holdings. Then the security intercom on the stone wall buzzed loudly, violently, shattering the afternoon tranquility. My head of security spoke through the crisp speaker. "Ms. Sloan, there is a man at the front gate aggressively demanding entry right now. He claims he is your son's father. He is threatening to call the local Honolulu authorities and report an international parental kidnapping if we do not grant him immediate access to the property." My blood turned to absolute ice. Travis, my ex-husband, the man who walked out on me when I was 4 months pregnant, because the mere thought of parental responsibility did not fit his elite playboy lifestyle. Travis came from a prominent, untouchable family of generational wealth, a bloodline of arrogant trust fund kids who truly believed consequences were only meant for the working class. But his own degenerate gambling habits and endless string of failed tech ventures had effectively cut him off from his family, main wealth reservoir years ago. He was a wealthy aristocrat in name, only constantly hunting for his next major payday. If Travis was physically standing at my front gate in Hawaii, it meant only one specific thing. Harrison had desperately scraped together the very last of his hidden personal cash to buy Travis a first-class plane ticket. My father had deliberately summoned the darkest ghost of my past, sending him across the Pacific Ocean like a highly paid corporate hitman to terrify me into submission. Harrison genuinely thought bringing Travis back into the picture would send the weak, fragile single mother crumbling to her knees in sheer panic. He completely underestimated the absolute monster he had forged in the fire of his abuse. "Let him in," I instructed the guard, keeping my voice dangerously steady. "Escort him directly to the main terrace. Do not let him step one single foot inside the actual house. If he tries, restrain him." I remained seated, crossing my legs and folding my hands neatly in my lap. I slowed my breathing, projecting a wall of unbreakable calm. A few minutes later, the heavy security golf cart pulled up the winding limestone driveway, and Travis stepped out into the Hawaiian sun. He looked exactly the same as he did 7 long years ago. He wore a slick, tailored linen suit, his dark hair swept back perfectly, carrying the infuriating, entitled smirk of a man who believed the entire world owed him a massive favor. Sloane Travis sneered, walking up the limestone steps and looking around the palatial beachfront estate with greedy, wide, predatory eyes. Harrison was definitely not kidding. "You really hit the absolute jackpot out here. Who did you have to swindle to get the keys to a magnificent palace like this? You have exactly 2 minutes to state your business before my armed security team throws you off this cliff," I said, not moving a single inch from my chair. Travis chuckled darkly, arrogantly, adjusting his expensive silver cufflinks. "Always so incredibly dramatic and emotional. Listen to me very carefully, Sloane. I got a very interesting phone call from your dad yesterday evening. He tells me you have become completely unstable. He said you froze the family accounts out of pure spite, stole corporate money, and took my son across the ocean without properly notifying me. He claims you are actively keeping Leo from his loving, supportive family. I have decided it is finally time I step up and take an active, permanent role in my son's life." My chest tightened at the sheer audacity of his incredibly fabricated lies. "We can do this the easy way," Travis continued, pacing slowly in front of my table like a hungry shark circling its prey. "You write me a very generous 8-figure check for retroactive co-parenting expenses and ongoing child support, or I use my family highly elite old money lawyers to easily take you to court for full physical custody. An unstable, erratic single mother versus a prominent tech founder from a highly respected bloodline. It will certainly not look very good for you, Sloane, trust me." I thought he had me cornered. He thought he held all the winning cards in his hand. He truly believed that parading his generational wealth and making hollow legal threats would force me to surrender my hard-earned empire. He assumed I was still the terrified, abandoned, pregnant girl he left weeping in a tiny apartment years ago. But his timing could not have been worse. I looked at this arrogant fraud feeling absolutely no fear, only a cold, calculating anticipation for the total and absolute destruction I was about to unleash upon his fake, heavily subsidized life right now. You really think you can stroll onto my private beachfront estate and threaten me with family court, Travis? I said, keeping my voice completely level. You abandoned your own child before he even took his first breath. You have not sent a single dollar or made a single phone call in 7 years. A judge will laugh you right out of the courtroom. Travis smirked, leaning arrogantly against the expensive stone railing like he owned the entire island. You clearly do not understand how the real world operates, Sloan. Justice is not blind. Justice responds to whoever can afford the best legal representation. My family has retained the most ruthless attorneys on the mainland for decades. I will paint you as an erratic, bitter woman who deliberately hid my son from me. I will tell the judge I have been aggressively searching for Leo for years. With my prominent family name and my current massive financial success, they will hand me primary custody before you can even blink. Or we skip the nasty legal battle entirely. You wire $10 million into my personal account today and I walk away forever. Consider it a cheap settlement for your peace of mind. I took a slow sip of my iced tea. Your current massive financial success, I repeated, feigning genuine curiosity. Is that what you are calling it these days, Travis? Because last I checked, your family completely cut you off from the main trust fund after you blew through $2 million on degenerate gambling debts and miserably failed cryptocurrency investments. His smug expression faltered for a fraction of a second, but he quickly recovered defensively, adjusting his expensive linen jacket. That is ancient history, Sloan. I am a highly respected tech founder now. My company, Vanguard Solutions, is currently closing a massive Series B funding round. We are literally days away from securing a $30 million anchor investment from a top-tier venture capital firm. I am about to be richer than my parents. I do not actually need your pathetic money, but I refuse to let a hostile woman keep my flesh and blood away from his rightful legacy. Now write the check or I call my lawyers right now to file the paperwork and destroy you. I set my glass down on the table. The sharp clink echoed loudly across the quiet terrace. Vanguard Solutions, I said smoothly. That is a very catchy name, Travis. Tell me, how exactly are the profit margins looking this quarter? Because according to the forensic audit I just reviewed an hour ago, your burn rate is entirely unsustainable. You are completely out of cash. You are utterly desperate. If that Series B funding round fails to close, your entire company files for bankruptcy by next Friday. Travis froze. The arrogant color rapidly drained from his face, leaving him looking sickly and pale under the bright Hawaiian sun. How do you know the name of my company? He demanded, his voice dropping an octave in sudden fear. How did you get access to my confidential financial audits? Those documents are secured under strict non-disclosure agreements with my venture capital investors. Nobody outside the firm has seen those numbers. I leaned back in my chair, folding my hands neatly together. You really should pay much closer attention to the shifting corporate landscape, Travis. Especially when you are desperately begging for millions of dollars to save your rapidly sinking ship. The highly respected venture capital firm you are courting was aggressively acquired late last quarter. They are now a direct operational subsidiary of a much larger private equity conglomerate. Travis stared at me, his eyes darting frantically as his mind tried to connect the sudden terrifying dots. No, he whispered, taking a slow, trembling step backward. No, that is entirely impossible. A private equity conglomerate called Apex Holdings. I finished for him, delivering the final fatal blow with absolute surgical precision. I am the sole proprietor and managing director of Apex Holdings, Travis. I am the faceless corporate overlord you have been desperately trying to impress for the last 6 consecutive months. I am the ultimate decision-maker regarding your $30 million anchor investment. He stopped breathing. His perfectly styled hair suddenly looked messy as a bead of cold sweat rolled down his left temple. You are lying, he choked out, pointing a violently shaking finger at me. You are a broke single mother. You do not have the massive capital required to acquire a Tier 1 venture capital firm. Harrison told me you stole some money from his business accounts. You are completely bluffing to scare me. I pulled my cell phone from my pocket and unlocked the glowing screen. Let us see exactly who is bluffing, Travis. I called my lead corporate attorney 20 minutes before you arrived at my front gate. I instructed him to permanently kill your funding deal. I told him to officially cite gross financial instability, terrible leadership, and the absolute moral bankruptcy of the founder as the primary reasons for our immediate non-negotiable withdrawal. I also instructed him to instantly blackball Vanguard Solutions across all our partner networks. Your company is completely dead in the water. You are financially ruined and utterly finished in the tech sector. Right on cue. Travis' phone began ringing aggressively inside his jacket pocket. The loud, obnoxious ringtone shattered the heavy silence on the terrace. He flinched, like he had been physically struck across the face. He pulled the phone out with trembling hands and stared at the caller identification screen. It was his chief financial officer calling repeatedly. "Answer it, Travis," I commanded coldly, leaning forward. "Answer the phone right now and listen to your entire fake empire burn straight to the ground." He swiped the screen and lifted the phone to his ear, his hand shaking violently. "Yeah," he whispered weakly. He listened for exactly 10 seconds. His eyes widened in sheer terror as it shattered. The phone slipped from his sweaty fingers, clattering loudly against the immaculate marble floor of my terrace. The screen cracked, a perfect visual representation of his completely ruined life. He did not even bother picking it up. He just stood there staring at me with a hollow, vacant expression as the reality of his total financial destruction washed over him. The venture capital funding was gone. His startup was dead. His arrogant facade melted away, leaving nothing but a desperate, pathetic fraud. "Sloan, please," Travis stammered, his voice cracking. "You cannot do this. I have investors relying on me. I have employees. I have personal guarantees tied to that funding round. If Apex Holdings pulls out now, I will be utterly bankrupt by Monday morning. I will lose absolutely everything." "You already lost everything, Travis," I said coldly. "You just lacked the basic intelligence to realize it until right now." His desperation instantly morphed back into a cornered, vicious anger. He stepped forward, his fists clenched tightly at his sides. "You think you won because you have money now. You think you can just crush my business and walk away. But you are forgetting one massive detail, Sloan. I am still Leo's biological father. I still have paternal rights. If you destroy my company, I will drag you through family court purely out of spite. I will demand partial custody. I will demand visitation. I will make your life a living nightmare until you agree to reinstate my funding." I sighed slowly, shaking my head at his relentless, exhausting delusion. I reached into the sleek leather portfolio resting on the glass table next to my iced tea. I pulled out a single neatly folded document. I dropped the document onto the table. "Read it, Travis," I commanded. He stared at the paper suspiciously before reaching down with trembling hands. His eyes scanned the bold legal heading. The color that had just returned to his face drained away instantly. "You still have this," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the sound of the ocean waves. "I kept the original copy in a maximum security safety deposit box for 7 long years," I replied, watching his entire world collapse for the second time in 5 minutes. "And my corporate lawyers verified it was permanently filed with the state courts before you even landed in Honolulu today. It was a binding custodial relinquishment agreement." 7 years ago, when I was 4 months pregnant, Travis was drowning in massive, terrifying gambling debts. He owed dangerous people a lot of money, and his old money family had completely cut him off, refusing to bail him out again. He came to my tiny apartment crying, begging me for help. I took the very last $50,000 from my personal savings, the money I was fiercely hoarding for my baby, and I offered him a ruthless deal. I paid off his violent loan sharks. In exchange, he signed an ironclad legal contract permanently surrendering all parental rights to Leo. He signed away his own flesh and blood for gambling money without a single moment of hesitation. "You sold your son for $50,000, Travis," I said, my voice cutting through the warm air like a frozen blade. "You legally severed all ties to Leo before he was even born. You are not his father. You are just a pathetic sperm donor who sold his parental rights to pay for a poker debt. You have absolutely no legal standing in family court. You cannot demand custody. You cannot demand visitation. You are a legal ghost." That contract was signed under extreme duress. Travis argued weakly, dropping the paper back onto the table. I can easily contest it. I will tell the judge you forced me to sign it. Go ahead and try. My legal team will happily present the paper trail proving the money went directly to illegal bookmakers. We will expose your degenerate gambling addiction to the general public. We will show the family court judge exactly what kind of degenerate you truly are. You will not just lose the custody battle. You will face federal scrutiny for illicit financial transactions. Travis fell to his knees on the hard marble floor. The expensive linen suit he wore wrinkled as he completely abandoned his aristocratic pride. He was sobbing now, heavy, ugly tears streaming down his face. Sloan, I beg you, do not do this. Reinvest in my company. Give me another chance. I will leave you and Leo alone forever. I will never bother you again. Just please save Vanguard Solutions. I looked down at the man who broke my heart 7 years ago. I felt absolutely nothing. No pity, no remorse. Only the satisfying clarity of absolute justice. Security, I called out loudly. 2 massive guards stepped onto the terrace instantly, their expressions stern and uncompromising. Escort this man off my property, I instructed. Take him to whatever cheap hotel he booked and leave him there. If he returns to this gate, have the local police arrest him for trespassing. The guards hauled Travis to his feet, dragging him away as he kicked and screamed my name. I sat back down, picked up my iced tea, and took a slow, refreshing sip. An hour later, my phone rang. The caller identification showed the front desk of a budget hotel near the airport. I answered. It was Travis, begging and crying hysterically from a public lobby phone. He wailed loudly about his entirely ruined life, screaming that his investors were demanding immediate answers. The front desk clerk had apparently threatened to throw him out onto the busy street because his payment methods were completely frozen. He was utterly trapped in a cheap hotel lobby, with absolutely no money, no powerful family connections to save him, and zero future prospects. I listened to his pathetic, endless sobbing and then firmly ended the call without speaking again. I listened to his pathetic, endless sobbing and then firmly ended the call without speaking again. I blocked the hotel main number and placed my phone back on the glass table. The afternoon sun was beginning its slow descent toward the horizon, casting a brilliant golden hue across the Pacific Ocean. I closed my eyes and breathed in the salty air. Travis was neutralized. His toxic shadow was permanently erased from Leo Future. For the first time in 7 years, I felt a profound, untouchable sense of security. I spent the rest of the evening playing board games with my son, ordering his favorite gourmet pizza, and watching a movie in the massive home theater. We laughed until our stomachs hurt. I tucked him into his king-sized bed, kissed his forehead, and promised him that nobody would ever yell at him again. Monday morning arrived with pristine blue skies. I sat in my home office finishing the final paperwork to liquidate Harrison Real Estate subsidiary. The corporate guillotine was dropping swiftly. The eviction notice for their mansion was officially processed. The luxury cars were already safely locked in a bank impound lot. I assumed my family was currently scrambling through the ruins of their shattered reality in Connecticut. I was completely wrong. The security intercom on my office wall buzzed with an urgent, sharp tone. Ms. Sloan, my head of security, announced, his voice tight with alarm. We have a massive situation at the main gate. There are 3 individuals attempting to force their way onto the property. They are aggressively banging on the iron gates and screaming your name. They claim they are your immediate family. They are demanding that we open the gates, or they will ram them with their rental car. My hands froze over my keyboard. Harrison, Carolyn, and Brittany. They actually flew to Honolulu. The sheer logistical impossibility of it crossed my mind. Their accounts were frozen. Their credit was completely destroyed. They had absolutely zero access to liquid cash. I would learn later from DeAndre that Harrison had ripped his vintage Rolex watch right off his wrist and pawned it at a shady downtown dealer for a fraction of its true value, just to purchase 3 economy-class tickets on a red-eye flight. They flew across the entire ocean, packed in middle seats fueled entirely by their blinding narcissistic rage. Do not call the police just yet. I instructed the guard, feeling a cold, calculating surge of adrenaline. Let them through the main gate. Escort them to the front driveway, but have 4 armed guards surround them. Do not let them step 1 inch past the front door. I will handle this myself. I walked out of my office, my heels clicking sharply against the marble floors. I stepped out onto the expansive front portico. The heavy iron gates swung open in the distance. A cheap, battered rental car sped up the long, winding limestone driveway, coming to a screeching, chaotic halt right in front of my meticulously manicured lawn. The car doors flew open. Harrison stepped out first. He looked absolutely horrendous. The slick, polished patriarch was gone. He wore a wrinkled suit. His face was red and bloated, and his eyes were completely bloodshot. Carolyn stumbled out next, her perfectly styled hair, flat and greasy looking like she had aged 10 years overnight. Brittany emerged from the back seat, clutching a designer handbag like a life preserver, her face stained with ruined makeup. Sloane Harrison roared, marching toward the steps, before two massive security guards instantly blocked his path, crossing their arms to form a human wall. "Call your hired muscle off right now. You are going to listen to me." I stood at the top of the stairs looking down at them. "You flew a very long way, just to get kicked off my property twice in 1 week, Dad," I said calmly. Carolyn pushed her way forward, grabbing the arms of the security guard. "Sloane, how could you do this to us? The bank sent an eviction notice this morning. The country club publicly terminated our membership. My friends are refusing to return my phone calls. You have utterly humiliated this family. Turn the money back on right now. You humiliated yourselves." I fired back, my voice echoing across the courtyard. "I gave you a lifeline and you used it to choke me. You have absolutely nothing left." "That is where you are completely wrong," Harrison shouted, pulling a crumpled stack of legal papers from his jacket pocket and waving them furiously in the air. "I spoke to a lawyer yesterday. You committed severe corporate fraud, Sloane. You secretly bought my company and manipulated the financial structures to steal my assets. I am the rightful chief executive officer. That $150 million belongs to the family estate. You are going to sign over full operational control of Apex Holdings to me today, or I am taking you to federal court and sending you to prison." The absolute delusion was staggering. He truly believed he could bully his way into stealing my entire tech fortune. Brittany pushed past her mother, pointing a sharp, manicured finger at me. "And you are going to pay off the $100,000 in credit card debt you ruined my marriage over." DeAndre actually filed for divorce this morning. He locked me out of the condo. "You ruined my brand. You ruined my life. You owe me a massive settlement for emotional damages right now." I stared at the three of them. They were desperate scavengers demanding I serve my entire life to them. "You want control of the family assets, Harrison?" I asked, stepping forward to look into his bloodshot eyes. "You want to claim my money as your own?" I grinned coldly at his desperate attempt to bully me. "Your pathetic threats mean absolutely nothing to me anymore, Dad. The reality is you have already lost the war." "Your pathetic threats mean absolutely nothing to me anymore, Dad. The reality is you have already lost the war." I reached into my pocket, pulled out my cell phone, and tapped the screen. I dialed the Honolulu Police Emergency Line and pressed the speakerphone button, turning the volume up so the dialing tone echoed across the stone courtyard. Harrison's face dropped. The aggressive posture he held a second ago vanished, replaced by sudden sharp panic. "What are you doing, Sloane?" he demanded. "Put that phone away right now. This is a private family dispute." "Honolulu, emergency dispatch. What is your location?" An authoritative voice rang out from my phone speaker. "Yes," I said calmly, maintaining direct eye contact with my father. "I need to report 3 hostile individuals trespassing on my private estate. They breached the front gate and are attempting to extort me. They are acting aggressively and threatening me." "Sloane, hang up the phone this instant!" Carolyn shrieked. She grabbed Harrison's arm, looking wildly at the armed security guards. "You cannot call the cops on your own parents. We cannot have police cars showing up. Please send officers immediately." I continued, ignoring my mother. The dispatcher confirmed units were being dispatched and instructed me to keep the line open. I lowered the phone. "You have 5 minutes before the police arrive to arrest you for trespassing and extortion," I told them, my voice devoid of sympathy. "I am not going to let you stand on my driveway and make a trashy public scene for my neighbors. Move inside, right now." I gestured toward the double doors leading into my estate. My security team boxed them in, forcing Harrison, Carolyn, and Brittany to march up the steps and into my living room. Once they crossed the threshold, the heavy doors clicked shut behind them. My guards stood perfectly still at every exit. They were effectively trapped inside my home, with the police actively listening on the open speakerphone. "You are going to regret this," Harrison hissed, pacing across the white marble floor. "You think you can lock us in here and humiliate us? I am your father. I built the company you stole. I will tell the police you kidnapped us." "Go ahead and try, Dad," I said, leaning against the doorframe. "The dispatcher is listening right now. Extortion and filing a false police report will look fantastic on your permanent record." Brittany collapsed onto a white leather sofa, burying her face in her hands. "This cannot be happening," she wailed, rocking back and forth. "My entire life is completely ruined. DeAndre kicked me out. The bank froze my accounts. I am sitting in a living room waiting to be arrested like a common criminal. I just want my husband to come rescue me and fix this mess." Right on cue, the security intercom buzzed loudly through the living room speakers. The timing was perfect. "Emma Sloan," the guard announced. "Another individual has just arrived." He presented his identification. "It is DeAndre. He is requesting immediate entry." Brittany's head snapped up so fast I thought she might break her neck. "DeAndre," she gasped, a massive wave of delusional hope washing over her ruined face. "He came for me. I knew he could not live without me. He followed me to Hawaii to apologize and bring me home." "Let him in, Sloan. Let my husband inside right now." I smiled coldly. "Grant him immediate access," I told the guard. "Escort him directly into the living room." My mother let out a sigh of relief, smoothing her wrinkled dress. "Thank goodness DeAndre is here. He always knows how to calm things down. He will talk some sense into you, Sloan. He knows how important family unity is." 2 minutes later, the heavy wooden doors swung open. DeAndre walked into the living room. He did not look like a man arriving to rescue his beloved wife. He looked like a towering, furious force of nature. He wore a dark suit, his expression completely hardened into stone. He did not spare a single glance for Harrison or Carolyn. His eyes locked directly onto Brittany, who was already standing up and wiping her tears, ready to run into his arms. "DeAndre, I am so glad you are here," Brittany cried, taking a step toward him. "Sloan has lost her mind. She called the police on us. Tell her to drop the charges and let us go home. We can fix our marriage. I promise I will be better." DeAndre did not open his arms. He did not offer comfort. Instead, he reached inside his jacket and pulled out a thick manila envelope. He threw it violently onto the glass coffee table right in front of Brittany. The loud smack made everyone in the room jump. "I am not here to rescue you, Brittany DeAndre," said his voice echoing across the silent living room. "I tracked your flight using the shared airline miles account you forgot to log me out of. I took the very next flight out of the city because I wanted to look you directly in the eyes when I did this." Brittany stared at the thick envelope resting on the glass table. "What is this?" she whispered, her hands trembling uncontrollably. "Those are your official divorce papers," DeAndre stated flatly, crossing his arms. "And they include a detailed civil lawsuit for the $100,000 in credit card debt you fraudulently opened under my identity. I flew across the ocean to serve them to you personally. You cannot dodge the process server now. You have been officially served." Brittany let out a piercing, hysterical shriek. She fell to her knees on the marble floor, clutching the envelope as if it burned her hands. Harrison and Carolyn watched in absolute stunned horror as their golden child-perfect marriage officially disintegrated right in front of their eyes. DeAndre turned to look at me, giving a sharp, respectful nod. "Thank you for letting me in, Sloan. I will not take up any more of your time. I am heading straight back to the airport." "You are always welcome here, DeAndre," I replied, offering him a genuine smile. "Have a safe flight back home." The police sirens began wailing loudly in the distance, growing closer to my front gate. The flashing blue and red lights reflected through the living room windows, painting my family terrified faces in alternating colors. They were completely trapped. Their money was gone. Their lies were exposed. The divorce was finalized. And the authorities had just arrived to finish the job. Two uniformed Honolulu police officers stepped through the heavy double doors, escorted by my armed security team. Their hands rested professionally on their duty belts. The flashing lights from their cruisers outside cast a frantic red and blue glow across the pristine white marble of my foyer. Harrison immediately puffed out his chest, stepping forward to intercept them with the arrogant swagger of a man who still believed his voice carried weight. "Officers, thank God you are here," Harrison barked, pointing a thick finger directly at me. "I want this woman arrested immediately. She has stolen our family assets and is currently holding us hostage inside this house against our will. We are prominent citizens from Connecticut, and we demand a full investigation into her fraudulent financial activities." The lead officer, a tall man with a stern expression, did not even blink at my father shouting. He completely ignored Harrison and looked directly at me. "Ms. Sloan," he asked, his voice calm and authoritative. "We received a call from dispatch regarding hostile trespassers attempting extortion on your property. Are these the individuals in question?" "Yes, officer," I replied, crossing my arms. "They breached my front gate and demanded I sign over my corporate assets to them. I have the entire incident documented on my security cameras with full audio recording." "This is an absolute outrage," Carolyn shrieked, clutching her designer handbag against her chest like a shield. "We are her parents. You cannot arrest parents for visiting their own daughter. We are the victims here. She froze our bank accounts and left us completely destitute." The second officer pulled out a notepad. "Ma'am, freezing bank accounts is a civil matter. Trespassing on private property and demanding money under threat is a criminal offense. I suggest you lower your voice and cooperate." DeAndre, who had been standing quietly near the door watching the pathetic spectacle, suddenly stepped forward. He reached into his dark suit jacket and pulled out a second, significantly thicker manila envelope. He did not look angry anymore. He looked entirely resolved, like a man who was about to permanently excise a tumor from his life. "Officers, if we are discussing criminal offenses, I have something you need to see right now," DeAndre said smoothly. He handed the thick envelope to the lead officer. "My name is DeAndre. The woman crying on the sofa is my soon-to-be ex-wife, Brittany. That envelope contains irrefutable proof of massive interstate financial fraud and severe identity theft." Brittany had snapped up, her tear-streaked face turning an alarming shade of pale white. "DeAndre, no," she gasped, scrambling up from the leather sofa. "You cannot do this. I am your wife. We took vows. You broke those vows the second you forged my signature to fund your fake internet lifestyle." DeAndre fired back, not breaking eye contact with the police. "Officers, inside that envelope, you will find certified copies of my credit reports pulled directly from the 3 major bureaus. You will also find physical copies of 3 separate credit card applications. They were opened over the last 24 hours. No, sorry, over the last 2 years. The signatures on those applications do not match mine. The IP addresses used to open the digital accounts track directly to her personal laptop and her mobile phone." The lead officer opened the envelope, scanning the top pages with a trained, critical eye. "How much money are we talking about, sir?" he asked, flipping to the next document. "Over $100,000. DeAndre stated clearly, making sure the number echoed off the high ceilings. "She maxed out those fraudulent cards to pay for luxury vacations, designer clothing, and fine dining. She deliberately hid the physical statements and intercepted the mail. I already filed a preliminary police report with the authorities back home this morning before I boarded my flight to Honolulu. I brought the case numbers and the contact information for the lead detective assigned to my file. I am handing this to you now because she is clearly a massive flight risk. She is desperate, she is broke, and she has absolutely nothing left to lose." "This is a lie!" Brittany screamed, her voice cracking as pure hysteria took over. "I never forged anything. He gave me permission to use his name. He told me I could buy whatever I wanted. Mom, tell them. Tell them DeAndre said I could use his credit." Brittany spun around to face Carolyn, desperately seeking her mother's usual blind protection. But Carolyn took a quick step backward, physically distancing herself from her golden child. The reality of federal fraud charges had just hit Carolyn like a freight train. She knew associating with Brittany right now meant risking her own freedom. "Do not drag me into your mess," Brittany, Carolyn said, her voice shaking with cowardly self-preservation. "I told you to stop spending so much money. I always told you to be responsible. I have absolutely nothing to do with your marital finances." Brittany's jaw dropped open in absolute shock. The mother who had endlessly enabled her toxic behavior, the woman who had praised her fake influencer career and degraded me for working an honest job was throwing her straight under the bus to save her own skin. Mom, how can you say that? Brittany sobbed, her knees buckling as she sank to the floor. You literally helped me pick. You came with me on the resort trips. You knew I was using DeAndre cards. You told me it was fine because men are supposed to provide for us. Shut your mouth right now, Brittany Harrison roared, stepping toward his daughter with a furious glare. Stop talking before you incriminate this entire family. It is a little too late for that. Dad, I interjected, thoroughly enjoying the utter collapse of their alliance. The officers are standing right here. They just heard Brittany confess to using the cards and implicate Carolyn as an active accomplice. You guys really are terrible at this. The lead officer closed the manila envelope and looked down at Brittany, who was now weeping hysterically on the marble tiles. Ma'am, please stand up, he ordered, his tone leaving absolutely no room for debate. Based on the documentation provided by your husband, the active case numbers from your home state, and the statements you just made in our presence, we are detaining you for questioning regarding interstate financial fraud and identity theft. No, Brittany wailed, crawling backward away from the officers. You cannot arrest me. I am an influencer. I have brand deals. If you put me in handcuffs, the paparazzi will ruin my life. Sloan, please. I am your sister. Tell them to stop. Pay off the debt. You have $150 million. $100,000 is nothing to you. Just write a check and make this go away. I will do anything you want. I looked down at the sister who had made my life a living nightmare for decades. I remembered her flashing that black card at Thanksgiving. I remembered her mocking my cheap sweater and my 10-year-old car. I remembered her laughing when Harrison screamed at Leo. I do not negotiate with criminals, Brittany, I said coldly. And I certainly do not pay the debts of women who steal from their own husbands. The second officer stepped forward, grabbing Brittany by the arm and hauling her forcefully to her feet. He pulled her arms behind her back. The sharp metallic click of the handcuffs snapping shut echoed loudly across the room. It was the most beautiful sound I had heard all week. Harrison and Carolyn watched in absolute paralyzed horror as their perfect golden child was restrained like a common thief. Harrison opened his mouth to object, but no words came out. He had no power here. He had no money to post bail. He had no expensive lawyers on retainer anymore. I was just a broke, desperate old man watching his fake empire crumble to dust. DeAndre adjusted his jacket, looking at Brittany with zero sympathy. I will see you in court, he said. He turned to the officers, thanked them for their time, and walked out the front door into the warm Hawaiian night. The officers escorted a sobbing, hysterical Brittany out of my house. The flashing lights illuminated her ruined face as they placed her in the back of the cruiser. Harrison and Carolyn were left standing alone in my living room, totally exposed and completely out of options. The police had taken their daughter, but I was not nearly finished with them yet. I turned away from the heavy glass doors and walked slowly back to the center of the living room. Harrison and Carolyn stood frozen on the immaculate marble floor. The flashing red and blue lights had finally faded into the distance, leaving behind a suffocating silence. Carolyn stared at the empty space where Brittany had just been kneeling, her hands shaking uncontrollably. She had sacrificed her golden child to save herself from federal fraud charges, and the profound guilt was already fracturing her fragile mind. Harrison, however, was a completely different breed of monster. He straightened his wrinkled jacket, clearing his throat loudly to project an authority he no longer possessed. He looked at me with pure, unadulterated venom. You think you have won? Sloan, Harrison growled, taking a heavy step forward. You think having Brittany arrested proves you are the smartest person in the room. But you are forgetting one massive detail. I am still the chief executive officer of that real estate firm. You might own the parent company, but I hold all the local operational contracts. If you do not reinstate my corporate access and drop this ridiculous eviction nonsense, I will burn that subsidiary to the ground. I will call every vendor, every contractor, and every local politician in Connecticut and tell them Apex Holdings is a fraudulent shell company. I will destroy your $150 million empire before you even wake up tomorrow morning. I looked at the man who had terrorized me for my entire life. His sheer arrogance was almost impressive. I walked over to my desk, picked up a sleek black folder, and casually tossed it onto the glass coffee table right where DeAndre had thrown the divorce papers moments earlier. "You are not going to call anyone, Dad?" I said, my voice dropping to a dangerously quiet pitch. "Because you do not have any vendors or contractors left to call." Harrison frowned, his bushy eyebrows pulling together. "What kind of garbage are you spouting now?" "That folder contains the preliminary results of a massive forensic audit initiated by the financial compliance team at Apex Holdings," I stated, gesturing to the black leather binder. "When I bought your bankrupt company 3 years ago, I installed automated tracking software across all the corporate financial ledgers. I wanted to monitor the operational health of my investment. But over the last 18 months, the software flagged several highly suspicious anomalies. Massive outbound cash transfers, heavily inflated vendor invoices, phantom consulting fees paid to limited liability companies that absolutely do not exist." The color rapidly drained from Harrison's face. His mouth opened, but his vocal cords completely failed to him. He stared at the black folder like it was an active explosive device. Carolyn looked confused, her tear-streaked face scrunching up in bewilderment. "Harrison, what is she talking about? What phantom companies?" "I will tell you exactly what I am talking about, Mom," I said, never breaking eye contact with my father. "Your beloved husband, the brilliant businessman who just threatened to ruin my empire, has been actively embezzling money from my holding company for nearly 2 years. The total amount stolen currently sits right at $2 million. Carolyn gasped, bringing her hands up to cover her mouth. $2 million. Harrison, tell me she is lying. Tell me you did not steal corporate funds." Harrison swallowed hard. Sweat began to bead on his forehead. He took a nervous step backward. "It was a strategic reallocation of liquid assets," he stammered, his voice lacking its usual thunderous confidence. "I was securing our financial future. The real estate market is highly volatile. I needed an off-the-books safety net to protect the family estate." "A safety net?" I laughed, a sharp and utterly humorless sound. "You really want to stick with that specific narrative, Dad? You want to tell your devoted wife exactly what you bought with my $2 million? Harrison's eyes darted frantically toward the front door, looking like a trapped animal desperately seeking an escape route. "Sloan, do not do this," he whispered, his tone shifting from arrogant rage to pathetic begging. "We can handle this privately. I will pay the money back. I will sign whatever non-disclosure agreements you want. Just keep the details out of this room." Carolyn grabbed his arm, her acrylic nails digging into his suit jacket. "What did you buy, Harrison? If you secured a real estate asset to protect us, why are you begging her to stay quiet? Where is the $2 million? I did not wait for his pathetic excuses. I opened the black folder and pulled out a stack of high-resolution photographs and legal property deeds. I spread them out across the glass coffee table like a dealer dealing a fatal hand of cards. "I bought a luxury penthouse apartment in downtown Manhattan," I announced clearly, watching the devastating truth detonate in real time. "It features floor-to-ceiling windows, private elevator access, and a custom marble kitchen." But he did not buy it as an investment property, Mom. He bought it as a permanent residence for his 32-year-old mistress. Carolyn stopped breathing. Her eyes widened to the size of saucers as she stared down at the photographs. There were pictures of the stunning penthouse interior. There were copies of the property deed entirely funded by the phantom shell companies. And right on top was a crystal-clear surveillance photo taken by the private investigator my legal team hired last month. It showed Harrison walking out of the expensive Manhattan residential building, holding hands with a stunning, much younger blonde woman who was carrying a designer handbag purchased with my stolen money. "This cannot be real!" Carolyn choked out, her voice trembling. She grabbed the photograph with shaking hands. "Harrison, who is this woman? Why are you holding her hand?" "Harrison, who is this woman? Why are you holding her hand?" Carolyn choked out, her voice trembling. Harrison ripped the photograph out of her hands. "It is a business associate," he barked. "She is a real estate consultant based in Manhattan. The holding hands thing is a bad camera angle. You are being hysterical, Carolyn. Stop acting like a crazy person in front of our daughter." Carolyn looked like she had been physically struck. She staggered back, her knees hitting the white leather sofa. "A business associate," she repeated. A business associate you bought a $2 million penthouse for. A business associate you are holding hands with while carrying a $50,000 bag. I wanted that exact bag for my birthday. You gave it to a consultant. I did not buy her anything, Harrison shouted, pointing an accusatory finger at me. Sloan fabricated these documents. She is a bitter child trying to destroy our marriage because hers failed. I picked up the black folder, pulled out printed email correspondence, and dropped it onto the glass table. Read the emails, Mom, I said smoothly. He forwarded the digital receipts for the penthouse furniture directly to her personal inbox. He also forwarded the flight confirmations for their romantic getaway to Paris last month. You know, the business trip he took when he missed your anniversary dinner. Carolyn lunged for the papers. Her manicured hands shook violently. She read the passionate, sickeningly sweet messages her husband had written to a woman barely older than Brittany. She read the itemized receipts for diamond bracelets and sports cars. Every luxury she thought represented her elite status had been aggressively funneled to a mistress in New York. She let out an agonizing scream that echoed off the high ceilings of my Honolulu estate. She had sacrificed her relationship with her eldest daughter, enabled a toxic golden child, and defended a monstrous husband, all to protect a lavish lifestyle that was entirely fake. You spent my money on a filthy mistress, Carolyn shrieked, launching herself at Harrison. I stood by you when you went bankrupt. I lied to all my friends for you. I let you kick Sloan out because her poverty was ruining our image. And you were spending millions on a blonde secretary behind my back. Harrison violently shoved Carolyn away. She stumbled backward, crashing onto the leather sofa. Shut your mouth, Carolyn, he roared. You never cared about me. You only cared about the country club and your pathetic social standing. You bled my company dry buying useless garbage to impress women who hate you. I found someone who actually appreciates me. You used my daughter money to buy her a penthouse, Carolyn wailed, burying her face in her hands. You stole from Sloan to pay for your midlife crisis. We have no house. We have no cars. Brittany is in jail, and you are a cheating bastard. The show was infinitely better than I had anticipated. I simply provided the raw, unfiltered truth, and they aggressively tore each other to shreds. Harrison turned his furious glare back to me. You set this up, he growled. You knew about this for months, and you waited until today to humiliate me. You orchestrated this entire ambush. I did not force you to embezzle $2 million from my holding company, Dad, I stated coldly. I did not force you to sleep with a woman half your age. And I certainly did not force you to scream at my son and kick us out of your house on Thanksgiving. You orchestrated your own spectacular downfall. I simply provided the audience. You are a complete monster. Harrison spat, his hands balling into tight fists. I am a reflection of the man who raised me, I replied. But unlike you, I do not steal. I build. You are officially facing federal charges for corporate embezzlement and wire fraud. My legal team handed the entire forensic audit over to the Federal Bureau of Investigation 3 hours ago. Harrison staggered backward as if I had shot him straight in the chest. The Federal Bureau. Yes, Dad, the Federal Bureau. Embezzling $2 million across state lines carries a mandatory federal prison sentence. Your assets are frozen. Your mistress will be subpoenaed by the end of the week. And you will spend the next 10 years in a federal penitentiary explaining to inmates how a single mother outsmarted you. Carolyn looked up from the sofa, her face a horrific mess of smeared mascara and absolute despair. Sloan. She begged, her voice cracking into a pathetic whimper. You have to stop this. If he goes to prison, what happens to me? Where am I supposed to live? How am I supposed to survive without any money? I looked at the woman who gave birth to me. The woman who watched me struggle for 7 years and never offered a single dollar or a moment of comfort. You have 30 days to find a minimum wage job, Mom, I said smoothly. I highly suggest you start looking at affordable studio apartments in the industrial district immediately, because your free ride is permanently over. Harrison suddenly lunged toward the coffee table, grabbing the stack of financial documents and photographs. He frantically ripped the papers to shreds, throwing the pieces across the marble floor. He thought destroying the physical copies in my living room would somehow erase the digital evidence sitting on a secure server. It is all entirely fake, Harrison screamed, tearing the glossy photo of his mistress in half. I will tell the judge you fabricated the ledgers. I will tell them you hacked my secure accounts. You cannot prove anything. I am a respected businessman. You are a desperate criminal having a severe mental breakdown in my living room. I corrected him smoothly. And your time is up completely right now. It is over forever. It is over forever. The silence that followed my declaration was heavy thick with the undeniable reality of their total destruction. Harrison stood breathing heavily, staring at the torn pieces of evidence scattered across the marble floor. He looked utterly broken, a pathetic shadow of the terrifying patriarch who had ruled our family with an iron fist. But before he could even attempt another useless threat, Carolyn snapped. The realization that her entire life was a carefully constructed lie, fueled by stolen money and a secret mistress, finally broke her completely. With a guttural, furious scream, Carolyn launched herself off the white leather sofa. She threw herself at Harrison, her manicured hands curled into claws. She struck him across the face, her heavy diamond rings tearing a deep scratch into his cheek. You ruined everything, Carolyn shrieked, hitting his chest repeatedly. You spent my money on a cheap secretary. We are going to lose the mansion. We are going to be homeless. You disgusting, cheating, pathetic old man. Harrison grabbed her wrists, struggling to hold her back as she kicked and thrashed wildly. Stop it, Carolyn, he yelled, his face turning a dangerous shade of crimson. Get off me! You are embarrassing yourself. I am embarrassing myself, Carolyn wailed, ripping her hands free and slapping him again. You just got exposed for embezzling $2 million and buying a penthouse for a 20-year-old girl. My social life is completely dead. My friends will laugh at me. I have nothing left because of your filthy midlife crisis. As they physically fought in the center of my immaculate living room, the heavy oak front doors swung open again. The lead police officer stepped back inside, gripping Brittany firmly by her arm. She was still in handcuffs, her face a horrific mess of running mascara and snot. Excuse me, Ms. Sloan, the officer said loudly, completely unfazed by the domestic brawl unfolding in front of him. We need to collect the suspect personal identification and passport from her handbag before we transport her to the federal holding facility downtown. Carolyn and Harrison froze, turning to look at their golden child bound in steel cuffs. Brittany's eyes darted between her parents, landing on the shredded photographs of the blonde mistress and the luxury penthouse scattered across the coffee table. She had heard enough of the screaming from the courtyard to piece the disaster together. Dad, Brittany sobbed, struggling against the officer grip. Tell me that is not true. Tell me you did not steal $2 million and blow it on a mistress. I need you to hire a defense lawyer right now. I need bail money. DeAndre is taking everything and I am going to jail for credit card fraud. You have to bail me out today. Harrison looked away, unable to meet his favorite daughter, desperate pleading eyes. I cannot, Brittany, he muttered weakly, rubbing his bleeding cheek. The accounts are completely frozen. The feds are involved. I do not have any money left. You do not have any money? Brittany shrieked, her voice echoing shrilly off the glass walls. You bought a penthouse in Manhattan. Sell it. Get a loan. You cannot let me go to federal prison. I will not survive in there. My brand will be completely destroyed. He cannot sell it, you idiot! Carolyn screamed at her own daughter, her maternal instincts entirely replaced by bitter rage. The federal authorities are seizing everything. Your father is a cheating criminal. We are all going to be living on the street because he could not keep his hands to himself. You are both completely useless, Brittany roared, stomping her foot like a petulant toddler despite the handcuffs. You ruined my life. You raised me to believe we were rich. You told me I deserved the best of everything. You forced me to marry a wealthy athlete to maintain our image, and then you let Sloan cut off the corporate cards. This is entirely your fault, Dad. I hate you. I hate both of you. Do not you dare speak to me like that, Harrison barked, taking a step toward the police officer. I gave you everything. I funded your pathetic influencer career. You funded it with stolen money. Brittany fired back, tears pouring down her ruined face. You are a fake. You are a fraud. And you, Mom, you are just a shallow gold digger who let him do it. You both ruined my perfect life. I walked casually over to the custom mahogany bar cart sitting in the corner of the room. I picked up a crystal tumbler dropped in a single large ice cube and poured a generous measure of expensive bourbon. I stirred the amber liquid slowly, the soft clinking of the glass providing a beautiful soundtrack to their utter implosion. I took a slow, refreshing sip, feeling the smooth burn in my chest. I leaned against the bar, crossing my arms, and watched them tear each other to shreds. The toxic alliance that had oppressed me for 34 years was fracturing into a million jagged pieces. They were no longer a united front. They were three desperate, cornered rats fighting over a sinking ship. Carolyn turned her rage back to Harrison, screaming about the years she wasted acting like a dutiful wife. Harrison screamed at Brittany for being a spoiled, ungrateful brat who was too stupid to hide her credit card fraud properly. Brittany screamed at both of them, cursing the day she was born into such a pathetic fake family. They threw vicious insults exposing decades of hidden resentments, secret jealousies, and profound, deep-seated hatred for one another. They had spent their lives projecting an image of elite, untouchable perfection. But underneath the designer clothes and the luxury cars, they were morally bankrupt. And now, stripped of my financial protection, their true hideous nature was on full display. The police officer grabbed Brittany's designer handbag from the sofa, securing her identification. "Let us go, ma'am," he said, leading the sobbing influencer toward the heavy glass doors. Carolyn just sat frozen on the white leather sofa, covering her ears with trembling hands, completely unable to process the destruction of her golden child. She looked like a pathetic shell of the arrogant woman who mercilessly mocked my worn clothes a few days ago. The living room felt entirely different now. The immediate chaotic noise had vanished, replaced by the suffocating weight of impending doom for the two remaining occupants. Carolyn was quietly weeping into her hands, shattered by the reality of the Manhattan penthouse and the younger blonde mistress. Harrison stood in the center of the marble floor, his chest heaving as he stared at the shredded photographs he had torn apart moments earlier. Harrison slowly straightened his posture, adjusting his wrinkled suit jacket in a pathetic attempt to reclaim his lost authority. He looked at me, his bloodshot eyes narrowing into dangerous slits. "You think you are untouchable," Sloane Harrison snarled, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "You think hiding behind your anonymous holding company and your expensive corporate lawyers makes you completely invincible." I raised an eyebrow, genuinely curious about what pathetic threat he could conjure up next. "How exactly are you planning to fight back with $0 in your bank account and an impending federal indictment hanging over your head?" Harrison smiled, a twisted expression revealing his decaying morality. "I am going to the press," he announced triumphantly. "I am going to call every major financial news outlet on the mainland. The media loves a juicy scandal about a newly minted tech millionaire. I will tell them you orchestrated a hostile illegal takeover of my real estate business." Harrison threatened, gaining confidence as he outlined his delusional revenge fantasy. "I will tell them you committed severe elder abuse, that you manipulated financial records to frame me for embezzlement, and that you stole $150 million from your own loving family. I will paint you as a ruthless, sociopathic corporate villain who locked her parents out of their home on Thanksgiving just to steal their wealth." Carolyn looked up from her hands, her tear-streaked face registering his words. "Once the media publishes my exclusive story, your pristine business reputation will be completely annihilated. The tech conglomerate that bought your artificial intelligence platform will face massive public backlash for dealing with a fraud. Your new private equity firm will become completely toxic. I will tank your entire corporate empire, Sloane. So you are going to drop the federal charges, reinstate my executive access, and sign over half of Apex Holdings to me right now, or I make the calls." I stared at him for a long, quiet moment. He was attempting mutual assured destruction, hoping the mere threat of a public relations nightmare would terrify me into surrendering my fortune. He fundamentally misunderstood how power worked in the modern digital age. "You want to go to the media?" "Dad," I asked, my voice carrying a lethal, icy calm. "You want to call the Wall Street Journal and pitch a story about how your cruel daughter stole your company?" "That is exactly what I will do," Harrison sneered, leaning closer. "You are completely delusional, Harrison. News outlets require actual verifiable proof before publishing defamatory corporate accusations against a multi-million-dollar private equity firm. You have absolutely zero proof of fraud, because my acquisition of your bankrupt company was entirely legal, handled by top-tier corporate attorneys and signed by you 3 years ago. That does not matter, he argued stubbornly. The allegations alone will cause a massive public scandal. The court of public opinion will destroy you before the lawyers even get involved. No, they will not, I corrected him sharply. Because the moment you attempt to contact a journalist, my legal team will release the complete unredacted forensic audit to the public. We will release high-resolution photographs of you leaving the Manhattan penthouse with a woman younger than your own daughter. We will release the paper trail showing exactly how you stole $2 million to fund a secret life while your wife played country club queen. Harrison's face paled slightly, but he clenched his jaw. I do not have a public-facing consumer brand, Harrison. Apex Holdings is a private equity firm. The tech conglomerate that bought my software operates exclusively in enterprise business-to-business supply chain logistics. If you go to the press, the business world will not see me as a villain. They will see me as a ruthlessly efficient corporate executive who successfully executed a brilliant turnaround of a failing asset and purged a corrupt, embezzling chief executive officer without hesitation. Harrison opened his mouth to argue, but the words died in his throat as the reality of my statement hit him. Going to the press will not tank my reputation, Dad, I stated, stepping right into his personal space, forcing him to look me directly in the eyes. It will cement my reputation as an apex predator in the financial sector. It will show every venture capitalist and board member on the planet that I am absolutely untouchable, completely unsentimental, and dangerously competent. You will not be exposing me. You will be actively advertising my unmatched ruthlessness. Harrison staggered backward, his breathing ragged. His grand master plan, his ultimate media threat, had evaporated into nothingness. He had no leverage. He had no power. I was completely outmatched by the very daughter he had spent 34 years treating like a worthless burden. Now, I said, checking my expensive watch, I am giving you and Carolyn exactly 10 minutes to walk out my front door and find a ride to the airport. If you are still standing on my property when the clock strikes noon, I will have my security guards physically throw you both out. If you are still standing on my private property when the ticking clock strikes exactly noon today, I will have my armed security guards physically throw you both out into the busy street. Harrison stared at me, his chest heaving with breathless rage. He grabbed Carolyn by the wrist, dragging her up from the white leather sofa. She stumbled forward, completely broken by the horrific revelation of the Manhattan penthouse. They walked out of my house without another word, two shattered frauds stepping into the brutal reality of their newly impoverished lives. I watched the mahogany doors click shut, feeling a massive surge of absolute triumph. The toxic empire was officially dead. I walked back to the sunlit terrace, breathing in the Hawaiian air, ready to finally enjoy the wealth I spent 7 years bleeding to build. But digital media ensures toxic people always have one final weapon. My phone vibrated violently. It was David, my lead corporate attorney. I answered immediately. Sloan, we have an escalating situation online, David said urgently. Are you monitoring social media? No, I replied. What is happening? Your sister just posted a video on social media. It is gaining massive traction. She is executing a coordinated character assassination against you. I frowned. How does Brittany have a phone? She was arrested for felony fraud an hour ago. She posted it sitting in the police cruiser, David explained. She convinced the officer to let her send one text to her lawyer and use that window to upload a video she filmed in your bathroom earlier. The algorithm picked it up instantly. It already has 2 million views. I navigated to Brittany's social media page. The video was pinned to the top. I clicked play. Brittany filled the screen sitting on the floor of my guest bathroom. Her makeup was artfully smudged, giving her the appearance of a devastated victim. She stared directly into the lens, tears streaming down her contoured face. Hi, everyone, Brittany whimpered. I do not usually post personal things, but I am terrified. My older sister Sloan just stole my entire life. I watched as my sister spun a web of absolute lies. Sloane has always been fiercely jealous of me. Brittany sobbed directly to her millions of devoted followers. She is a bitter, angry single mother who absolutely hates my happy, perfect marriage. She recently came into a massive amount of hidden money, and she used her new wealth to completely destroy our entire family out of pure spite today. She aggressively framed me for federal financial crimes I did not commit. She hacked my personal bank accounts and maliciously fabricated massive credit card debt just to make my beloved husband think I was stealing from his retirement funds. DeAndre just packed his bags and left me. My evil sister paid expensive corporate lawyers to forge fake evidence, and now the police are standing outside waiting to unfairly arrest me. She is a cold-blooded sociopath who desperately wants to see me rot in a dark prison cell just because she is miserable and entirely alone. The video cut off with Brittany sobbing uncontrollably. I stared at the screen, my jaw clenched. She had weaponized her fake victimhood and fed me to the vicious wolves of the internet. The comment section was a complete disaster. Thousands of comments flooded the feed, viciously attacking my character. This is horrifying. Your sister sounds like a monster who uses wealth to frame their own family. Find out what companies Sloane owns and boycott them. Cancel her entirely. Stay strong, Brittany. Fight back against that evil witch. David's voice returned through the speaker. The engagement metrics are utterly disastrous, Sloane, he warned grimly. The general public is entirely on her side. They blindly love a crying influencer, and they absolutely hate wealthy corporate executives. Several mainstream entertainment blogs have already picked up the sensational story. They are aggressively trying to identify your tech company right now. If they manage to trace Apex Holdings back to your name, the resulting public relations nightmare could seriously damage our current enterprise investment portfolios. We are facing a massive digital smear campaign. Let them try, I said coldly, slamming my laptop shut. Brittany thinks a crying video will magically erase the physical evidence of her massive identity theft. What is our strategy? David asked. Should we release a formal press statement denying the allegations? No, I replied, my voice dangerous and icy. Public relations statements look weak and defensive. We do not negotiate with digital terrorists, David. We annihilate them. Draft a cease and desist order immediately. A cease and desist order will not stop her followers from sharing the video, David cautioned. I am not sending the order to Brittany, I clarified smoothly. I am sending it directly to the legal department of the social media platform itself. Contact their corporate counsel right now. Inform them they are actively hosting a video containing severe libel and active interference in an ongoing federal criminal investigation. I stood up, pacing across the terrace. Inform the platform that Brittany committed felony identity theft. She is currently sitting in a federal holding cell. If they do not remove that video and permanently suspend her account within 60 minutes, Apex Holdings will file a massive civil lawsuit against their corporation for facilitating criminal defamation and hosting illicit content. David chuckled in predatory agreement. A direct legal strike against the hosting platform. That is incredibly aggressive, Sloane. They will panic when they see the felony police report numbers attached to the demand. Aggressive is exactly what we need right now, I stated firmly. Brittany wants to play dirty. I am going to show her what real corporate power looks like. Execute the legal strike immediately, David. Wipe her digital existence away entirely. I hung up the phone. My sister thought a viral video would save her. She was about to learn a brutal lesson. I hung up the phone. My sister thought a viral video would save her. She was about to learn a brutal lesson. 54 minutes. That was exactly how long it took for my elite corporate legal team to completely dismantle a decade of Brittany carefully curated digital existence. I sat at my massive oak desk overlooking the pristine Hawaiian beach, actively refreshing my browser window. The viral video claiming I was a sociopathic thief had amassed nearly 3 million views, but I did not feel a single ounce of panic. I simply watched the clock ticking down on David's aggressive 60-minute ultimatum. At minute 55, the web page suddenly glitched. I hit the refresh button one more time. The screen flashed stark white before displaying a bold gray error message. This content is currently unavailable. I smiled. The social media giant had caved under the massive weight of a federal criminal dossier and a multi-million-dollar civil lawsuit threat. They did not just remove the defamatory video, they completely nuked her entire account. Brittany Page, with its millions of purchased followers, sponsored brand deals, and meticulously edited luxury vacation photos, vanished into the digital abyss. Her username returned a blank search result. The algorithm wiped her identity clean off the platform. My phone rang. David's voice crackled through the speaker, crisp and fiercely satisfied. The host platform legal counsel just called me directly, Sloan. They panicked the moment they saw the active felony case numbers attached to our cease and desist order. They scrubbed her profile across their entire network. They also flagged her underlying email addresses and device identification numbers. She is permanently banned from creating new accounts on their servers. Excellent work, David, I said, leaning back in my leather chair. Has there been any word from the local authorities regarding her current physical status? Yes, David confirmed smoothly. The police department officially processed her intake. Federal prosecutors are actively stepping in to assume jurisdiction. She was denied immediate bail due to her status as a flight risk. She will be spending the entire weekend sitting in a concrete cell wearing a standard issue orange jumpsuit. A wave of profound satisfaction washed over me. Brittany built her entire life on a foundation of stolen money and fake internet validation. Now she was completely stripped of both. She was entirely isolated, broke, and facing serious prison time. But my systematic dismantling of this toxic family was only half finished. What is the exact status on Harrison? I asked, shifting my focus to the corrupt patriarch who started this entire war. The process server successfully intercepted him and Carolyn at the commercial airport about 20 minutes ago, David reported, the predatory edge returning to his professional tone. They were attempting to board a budget flight back to the mainland. Our courier handed him a permanent gag order. Did he try to fight the server? I asked, fully expecting my father to throw a massive public tantrum. He started screaming right in the middle of the crowded departure terminal. David chuckled. I threatened to call the media again. But our server simply handed him the second envelope, the one containing the preliminary federal fraud indictment notification. The Federal Bureau of Investigation officially froze all his personal bank accounts an hour ago. When Harrison realized he could not even buy a cheap cup of coffee at the airport kiosk, he completely stopped yelling. The server noted he actually looked like he might suffer a heart attack right there by the security checkpoint. The federal indictment was the absolute ultimate kill shot. Harrison spent his entire miserable life bullying people, using his inherited business to crush small contractors, and belittling anyone who did not match his arrogant definition of success. Now he was looking down the barrel of a federal criminal conviction for massive corporate embezzlement. The gag order is actively in place, David continued. If Harrison speaks a single word about you, Apex Holdings, or the acquisition to any journalist or media outlet, he triggers an immediate $10 million penalty clause. He will also violate the strict conditions of his pending federal investigation. He is completely silenced, Sloan. The toxic media threat is officially neutralized. I want the pressure maintained, David, I instructed firmly. Do not give him a single second to breathe. I want his lawyers overwhelmed with discovery requests. I want the deed to the Manhattan penthouse seized and liquidated by Tuesday morning. Evict the blonde mistress immediately. Take the locks off that door and put the property straight on the open market. Consider her evicted, David said. The corporate auditors are finalizing the remaining paperwork now. You executed a flawless operational purge, Sloan. They have absolutely zero leverage left to use against you. I ended the call. I stood up and walked out onto the sunlit terrace. The chaotic noise that had plagued my entire existence was finally gone. There were no more insults about my modest lifestyle. There were no more cruel comparisons to my younger sister. There were no more threats to ruin my reputation or take my son away. I had systematically dismantled their fake empire, exposed their horrific crimes, and locked them in a cage built entirely by their own greedy actions. The air in Honolulu felt remarkably clean. I took a deep breath, letting the absolute peace settle into my bones. For 34 years, I was the family scapegoat. I was the target of their relentless, agonizing abuse. They thought pushing me out into the cold would break me. Instead, it forced me to build an impenetrable fortress. I was not just a successful business owner. I was a survivor who weaponized her success to achieve perfect, undeniable justice. The violent storm was completely over, and I was the only person left standing. They desperately wanted to destroy my life, but I destroyed their entire fake reality instead. Now I could finally focus entirely on my beloved son. While I spent my weekend building sandcastles with Leo, a completely different kind of structure was violently collapsing back on the mainland. The federal wheels of justice do not move slowly when presented with a perfectly packaged, irrefutable dossier of corporate embezzlement. By Monday morning, while Hawaii was still enveloped in the quiet dark of the early hours, the East Coast was waking up to a spectacular federal raid. At exactly 6 in the morning, Eastern Standard Time, a convoy of dark sport utility vehicles pulled up to the glass facade of the real estate corporate headquarters in Connecticut. Dozens of federal agents wearing tactical jackets swarmed the lobby. They did not politely ask for permission to enter. They executed a hard breach. The few early morning custodial workers watched in absolute shock as federal investigators aggressively secured the elevators, locked down the executive suites, and immediately began pulling servers from the server rooms. They boxed up years of Harrison fraudulent financial ledgers, seizing every single hard drive filing cabinet and corporate laptop in the building. But the Federal Bureau did not stop at the corporate office. A simultaneous raid was actively unfolding at the sprawling suburban mansion my family had proudly called home for decades. Harrison and Carolyn had barely managed to secure a miserable, incredibly turbulent commercial flight back from Honolulu on Sunday night. They had returned to their massive estate completely exhausted, entirely broke, and desperately trying to formulate a pathetic survival plan. Their delusions were abruptly shattered when heavy fists pounded relentlessly on their custom mahogany front doors. Harrison stumbled out of bed, pulling on a silk robe, aggressively shouting at whoever was disturbing his morning. When he swung the heavy door open, he was not greeted by a delivery driver or a pool boy. He was greeted by a team of stern federal agents holding an active search and seizure warrant. They pushed past him without a second of hesitation. Agents flooded the massive foyer, dispersing into the kitchen, the home theater, and the master suite. Carolyn woke up to the terrifying sight of federal investigators aggressively tagging her designer furniture and seizing her personal electronics as evidence. She screamed hysterically, demanding they leave her luxury items alone, but her arrogant demands fell on completely deaf ears. The agents methodically cataloged every single asset purchased with my stolen funds. Within 2 hours, the federal agents had completely stripped the house of any valuable evidence. But Harrison and Carolyn nightmare was just beginning. The moment the federal vehicles rolled out of the long limestone driveway, a different kind of vehicle pulled up. It was a representative from the primary mortgage lender accompanied by the local county sheriff. With the corporate subsidiary operational funds entirely frozen by Apex Holdings, the massive mortgage payments on the estate were officially in catastrophic default. The bank was not willing to wait a single extra day. The foreclosure process, heavily expedited by my corporate legal team quiet maneuvers, was executed with ruthless efficiency. The sheriff handed Harrison a formal eviction notice. They were given exactly 1 hour to collect whatever personal clothing they could fit into standard travel bags. Everything else, the antique furniture, the crystal chandeliers, the imported rugs, belonged to the bank. Carolyn experienced a complete psychological break. She ran through the sprawling house, desperately grabbing handfuls of designer clothing, shoes, and jewelry, shoving them haphazardly into black plastic garbage bags. The pristine, image-obsessed matriarch of the local country club was reduced to hauling trash bags full of clothes down her grand staircase, while the local sheriff watched with his hand resting on his utility belt. They were physically escorted out the front door. The bank representative changed the locks, immediately slapping a massive, highly visible foreclosure notice directly onto the front door. The elite suburban fortress was gone. Harrison stood on the sidewalk holding 2 pathetic garbage bags, staring blankly at the locked door of his former kingdom. He had no car. The luxury vehicles had been towed away on Friday. He had no credit cards. He had no cash. He pulled out his phone and desperately started calling his wealthy friends. his golf buddies, and the prominent local politicians he had spent decades bribing with lavish dinners. Every single call went straight to voicemail. The news of the federal raid had already hit the local morning broadcasts. In the ruthless world of suburban high society, the smell of a federal indictment is worse than the plague. His powerful friends had abandoned him. Carolyn sat on the curb, sobbing uncontrollably into her hands. She dialed the numbers of her closest spa friends and country club associates, begging for a guest room or a small personal loan. One by one, they all hung up on her. The women who had gladly drunk her expensive champagne and attended her lavish parties now treated her like a highly contagious disease. They were deeply terrified of being associated with a federal criminal investigation, with absolutely nowhere else to go. Harrison and Carolyn were forced to walk 2 miles down the busy highway, hauling their black plastic garbage bags in the freezing November wind. They eventually reached a decaying, poorly lit motel on the absolute outskirts of town. It was the kind of establishment that charged by the hour with flickering neon signs and stained carpets. Harrison had to swallow every last ounce of his remaining pride. He used a tiny stash of emergency cash he had hidden in his shoe to rent a cramped, filthy room on the ground floor. Carolyn, the woman who had mercilessly mocked my modesty and shamed me for parking a reliable car in her driveway, was now sitting on a sagging, stained mattress in a cheap roadside motel, listening to the loud traffic roaring past the thin window. They had fallen from the peak of high society to the lowest bottom. Their wealth was fake, their friends were fake, and now their punishment was devastatingly real. Their wealth was fake, their friends were fake, and now their punishment was devastatingly real. While my parents suffered in that squalid roadside motel, my sister Brittany was experiencing her own personal descent into a very different kind of hell. She spent the entire weekend locked inside a freezing federal holding cell, shivering in an abrasive orange jumpsuit that severely clashed with her fading spray tan. She was completely stripped of her designer makeup, her expensive hair extensions, and her heavily filtered social media identity. For the first time in her pampered, arrogant life, she was forced to sit in stark silence and face the catastrophic consequences of her own deliberate actions. By Wednesday morning, Brittany was hauled into a sterile, brightly lit courtroom for her emergency bail and arraignment hearing. Her assigned public defender looked completely exhausted, clearly overwhelmed by the mountain of irrefutable evidence my corporate lawyers and DeAndre had aggressively compiled against her. DeAndre sat on the opposite side of the courtroom, wearing a sharp, tailored navy suit. He looked incredibly calm, projecting the focused, disciplined energy of a professional athlete, ready to secure a major victory. He was not there to offer forgiveness. He was there to legally amputate the toxic weight of his fraudulent marriage. The judge, a no-nonsense woman who clearly despised financial predators, reviewed the thick stack of credit card applications, IP address logs, and banking statements. The evidence of massive identity theft was entirely bulletproof. To avoid a lengthy, highly public trial that would inevitably end with a severe federal prison sentence, Brittany, public defender, aggressively pushed her to accept a brutal plea deal. She had to plead guilty to felony wire fraud and identity theft. The judge handed down a sentence of 5 years of strict supervised probation, mandatory financial counseling, and the absolute requirement to pay back every single penny of the $100,000 she stole in restitution. But the criminal sentencing was only the first crushing blow. The civil divorce proceedings immediately followed, and DeAndre's legal team executed a flawless, ruthless legal slaughter. Because Brittany had committed targeted financial crimes against her own husband, the judge aggressively favored DeAndre in the division of their marital assets. DeAndre was awarded full, uncontested ownership of their luxury downtown condo, his retirement accounts, and his personal investment portfolios. The judge legally severed DeAndre from the massive mountain of credit card debt Brittany had fraudulently accrued. The $100,000 financial burden was pinned squarely and exclusively on Brittany's shoulders. She walked out of that courtroom a completely ruined woman. She had a felony conviction permanently attached to her name. She had no home, no husband, no access to our family wealth, and a 6-figure mountain of high-interest debt that was actively growing by the minute. DeAndre walked past her in the courthouse hallway without offering a single backward glance. He stepped into the bright morning sun, a free, wealthy, and thoroughly vindicated man. I sent him a brief congratulatory text message later that afternoon. He replied with a simple thank you, confirming he was immediately flying out to visit his family and start his life completely over, entirely free of my toxic sister. Brittany, however, was left standing on the cold concrete steps of the courthouse with absolutely nothing but the clothes on her back. With her parents hiding in a cheap motel and her social media accounts permanently deleted, she had zero resources to fall back on. Her probation officer handed her a very strict set of rules. She was required to secure immediate verifiable employment to begin paying off her massive court fees, legal fines, and victim restitution. If she failed to secure a legitimate job within 2 weeks, she would violate her probation and be sent directly to a federal penitentiary. The reality of her situation hit her with the force of a speeding freight train. The former golden child, the woman who had mercilessly mocked my simple clothes and laughed at my modest car, was now desperately filling out paper applications at local fast food restaurants. Because of her felony fraud conviction, no corporate office, retail boutique, or administrative business would even consider hiring her. Her options were brutally limited to manual low-wage labor. A few weeks later, my security team forwarded me a highly entertaining update regarding her employment status. Brittany had finally secured a job. She was hired as a waitress at a greasy 24-hour roadside diner situated right off the interstate highway. It was a chaotic, demanding environment that required her to work grueling 12-hour shifts on her feet. The poetic justice was absolutely staggering. Brittany, the fake luxury influencer who used to turn her nose up at premium holiday turkeys, was now wearing a cheap polyester uniform smelling of stale coffee and fried grease. She was forced to wipe down sticky tables, scrub dirty dishes, and take rude orders from impatient truck drivers just to earn meager tips. Every single dollar she made was immediately garnished by the state to pay back the colossal debt she owed DeAndre. I looked at the surveillance photograph my team had legally obtained. It showed Brittany carrying a heavy tray of dirty dishes, her face exhausted, her hair tied back in a messy knot, looking utterly defeated by the brutal weight of manual labor. She was finally experiencing the harsh, unforgiving reality of the working class she had spent her entire life aggressively mocking. She had constantly belittled me for building my software company from a cramped kitchen table, claiming manual effort was beneath her elite status. Now her entire existence was reduced to scrubbing kitchen tables just to stay out of a prison cell. I closed the photograph feeling a deep, resonating sense of absolute justice. The golden child was finally paying her harsh, inescapable, and thoroughly miserable dues, wiping down the filthy countertops of her entirely ruined and shattered life. She had absolutely nothing left. Excellent. While Brittany was learning the brutal value of a hard day of work, Travis was experiencing his own spectacular, highly public execution in the national financial press. A week after Apex Holdings officially pulled its anchor investment, the tech startup world woke up to a massive headline across major financial outlets. Vanguard Solutions was officially filing for Chapter 7, liquidating bankruptcy. When my corporate legal team pulled out and blackballed Travis Company across our extensive venture capital networks, it triggered an unstoppable panicked domino effect. Other secondary investors frantically panicked, pulling their capital commitments within 48 hours. The board of directors realized the company burn rate was a complete disaster, and the financial audits revealed severe mismanagement. Travis was stripped of his founder status and booted off the board of his own company before the bankruptcy papers were even filed. His dream of becoming a celebrated tech billionaire exploded into dust. But for a man who defined his entire self-worth by his aristocratic bloodline and high society status, the ultimate death blow came directly from his own family. The prominent old money patriarchs of his family had spent decades protecting their prestigious name from public embarrassment. When news broke that Travis had flown to Honolulu, attempted to extort his ex-wife, and failed spectacularly in front of Hawaii authorities, his family was deeply humiliated. They were even more horrified when the news of his company bankruptcy hit the front pages of Wall Street journals. To protect their corporate reputation and family legacy, The family board held an emergency meeting in New York. They issued a formal public statement severing all ties with Travis. They officially revoked his access to any secondary family trusts, canceled his emergency credit lines, and permanently removed his name from the family estate registry. The old Money family completely disowned him. They wiped his name clean from their charitable foundations and barred him from entering their private estates ever again. The fallout was swift and merciless. Without his family financial backing or his tech startup salary, Travis' luxury high-rise apartment in Manhattan was seized by creditors within days. His sports cars were towed from the underground garage. The elite country clubs where he used to strut around acting superior canceled his memberships immediately. The arrogant playboy who had spent his entire life looking down on working-class people was suddenly standing on a cold sidewalk in New York with 3 suitcases and a zero bank balance. He had gone from a self-proclaimed titan of industry to an absolute social outcast in under 2 weeks. Desperate, penniless, and completely broken, Travis tried one last time to reach me. He called my executive office from a borrowed phone, weeping hysterically into the receiver. He apologized for leaving me when I was 4 months pregnant 7 years ago. He begged for a job at Apex Holdings, offering to work as a low-level consultant just to pay his basic living expenses and secure a tiny apartment. I even offered to waive his pride entirely and act as a devoted father to Leo if I would just give him a second chance. I did not even speak a single word to him. My executive assistant transferred the call directly to David, my chief legal counsel. David coldly reminded Travis of the binding custodial relinquishment contract he had signed 7 years ago for $50,000 to clear his gambling debts. David informed him that any further attempt to contact me or my son would result in an immediate restraining order and a civil lawsuit for criminal harassment. David then hung up the phone and blocked his number forever. Travis was left standing in the freezing New York rain, completely erased from my life, while the people who tried to destroy me were rotting in motels, greasy diners, and cheap apartments. My empire was reaching unprecedented heights. Apex Holdings announced a revolutionary new expansion of our supply chain artificial intelligence platform. The global financial markets responded with overwhelming enthusiasm. Major international logistics conglomerates scrambled to sign long-term contracts with my firm, eager to integrate our software into their operations. Financial magazines featured major articles praising the mysterious, fiercely competent leadership behind Apex Holdings. I was invited to deliver keynote speeches at global economic summits recognized as one of the most influential minds in modern technology. Media outlets praised my visionary approach, completely unaware of the dramatic battle I had fought in private to protect my son and my fortune. I sat in my oceanfront office in Honolulu, reviewing our latest quarterly financial statements. Our corporate valuation had crossed $300 million. I looked out the floor-to-ceiling glass windows at the pristine Hawaiian coastline. My son Leo was playing on the lush green lawn with his private tutor, laughing happily under the warm tropical sun. I was growing up surrounded by genuine security, unconditional love, and absolute peace. He would never know the cold, toxic cruelty of the family I had left behind in Connecticut. He would never have to perform fake success or endure humiliation just to be accepted. Every single person who had tried to break me was now completely buried under the crushing weight of their own choices. Harrison was facing a mandatory federal prison sentence while hiding in a filthy roadside motel. Carolyn was washing her own clothes in a rusted sink, stripped of her fake country club status. Brittany was scrubbing greasy diner tables in a cheap polyester uniform to pay off her massive fraud debts. And Travis was a penniless nobody, shunned by the elite high society he had worshipped his entire life. They thought they could kick me out into the cold on Thanksgiving and watch me suffer. They thought a single mother with a kitchen table dream was an easy target. They had no idea that by throwing me out, they were unleashing the most dangerous, unstoppable force they would ever encounter. I did not just survive their cruelty. I conquered their world, dismantled their fake reality, and built an impenetrable kingdom they could never touch. I stood up from my heavy oak desk and walked out onto the expansive marble balcony. The warm Hawaiian evening was settling over the island, painting the sky in brilliant strokes of violet and burning gold. Below me on the pristine stretch of private white sand beach, Leo was laughing. His joyful voice carried clearly over the rhythmic crashing of the ocean waves. He was throwing a brightly colored frisbee to the property manager golden retriever, his small legs kicking up sand as he raced the dog to the water edge. Watching him, I felt a profound, overwhelming sense of absolute clarity. For 34 years, I had been aggressively conditioned to believe that family was an unbreakable bond, forged strictly by blood. I was taught that you had to endure the insults, the manipulation, and the cruel comparisons simply because you shared a last name. But blood does not make a family. Blood merely makes you related. True family is built on mutual respect, unwavering support, and absolute safety. The people who abandoned me at my lowest point, who sneered at my worn-out clothes and tried to exploit my success, were never my family. They were just parasites wearing the masks of parents and siblings. I leaned against the thick glass railing, letting the cool ocean breeze wash over my face. I thought about the sheer terror I felt that night on Thanksgiving, dragging my crying son out of a house filled with people who utterly despised us. I thought about the desperate, frantic energy I channeled into building my artificial intelligence platform late at night, while Leo slept in our tiny, drafty apartment. Every line of code I wrote, every investor pitch I made, was fueled by the burning desire to ensure my son would never have to rely on their toxic charity. And now, looking at the massive empire I had constructed, I realized something incredibly powerful. The ultimate freedom does not come from simply escaping your abusers. The ultimate freedom comes from entirely stripping them of the power they used to hurt you. Harrison, Carolyn, Brittany, and Travis all derived their arrogant cruelty from unearned wealth and fake social status. They used money as a weapon to belittle anyone who did not serve their narcissistic needs. By systematically dismantling their financial safety nets, I did not just ruin their credit scores. I completely obliterated their false identities. I forced them to look in the mirror and face the hideous empty shells they truly were without their designer clothes and luxury cars. They were powerless now, and in their powerlessness, they could never hurt another human being again. They could never scream at another child over a spilled cup of cheap wine. They could never manipulate another vulnerable person using the illusion of high society prestige. I had permanently neutralized the threat. Mom, look at this. Leo's voice broke through my thoughts. I looked down. He was holding up a massive, perfectly intact seashell, his eyes wide with pure, unfiltered wonder. The golden hour light caught his messy hair, making him look like a carefree angel. That is beautiful, sweetheart, I called back, smiling genuinely. Bring it up here so we can put it in your collection. He nodded eagerly and started sprinting up the wooden stairs leading from the beach to the terrace. I watched him run, my heart swelling with fierce protective love. The generational curse of our toxic bloodline was officially broken. Leo would never grow up believing his worth was tied to a corporate credit card or a fake internet aesthetic. He would learn the value of hard work, empathy, and fierce independence. He would inherit my empire, but more importantly, he would inherit the unbreakable strength it took to build it. He burst onto the balcony, slightly out of breath, and handed me the shell. I knelt down to his eye level, brushing the sand off his warm cheek. Are you happy here, Leo? I asked softly. He threw his arms around my neck, squeezing me tight. I love it here, Mom. Everyone is so nice, and nobody yells at us anymore. I closed my eyes, hugging him back with everything I had. I know, baby, I whispered into his hair. Nobody is ever going to yell at us again, I promise. I stood back up, holding his hand as we looked out at the vast, endless ocean together. The horizon was wide open, completely clear of the dark, suffocating clouds that had followed us for so long. We were finally safe. To anyone listening to this story who feels trapped in a cycle of family abuse, hear me right now. You are not obligated to set yourself on fire just to keep toxic people warm. You do not owe your peace of mind to people who use your vulnerabilities as ammunition. Your worth is not determined by the people who continually fail to see it. You have the power to walk away from the folding table. You have the power to build your own empire, whether that means a multi-million-dollar tech company, a quiet, peaceful home, or simply a life where you can breathe without fear. Do not let them convince you that you are weak, just because you refuse to play their cruel, manipulative games. Use their doubt as your absolute ultimate fuel. Turn your pain into an unstoppable, unyielding force. Strip them of their power by becoming so incredibly successful and entirely self-sufficient that their toxic opinions become completely irrelevant. You are the author of your own story. Do not let abusers hold the pen. Take your life back. Have you ever cut ties with a toxic family member to protect your peace? Have you ever turned rejection into your motivation to succeed? Tell me your stories in the comments below. Please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and always remember that the absolute best revenge is massive and undeniable lifetime success today. The compelling narrative of Sloane's triumph over her toxic relatives illuminates a profound and transformative lesson. Blood relations do not dictate an obligation to endure abuse, and reclaiming your power is the ultimate path to freedom. For decades, society has perpetuated the myth that family bonds are unbreakable and that we must unconditionally forgive the transgressions of our parents and siblings. However, this story shatters that harmful illusion, revealing that true family is forged through mutual respect, emotional safety, and unwavering support, not merely through shared genetics. When Sloane is forced to endure constant belittlement, she realizes that offering a financial safety net to her abusers only enables their cruelty. Her decision to freeze their assets and sever ties is not an act of mere vengeance, but a necessary enforcement of boundaries. It teaches us that walking away from a toxic environment is an act of profound self-love and self-preservation. We often drain our own emotional and physical resources trying to win the approval of people who are committed to misunderstanding and diminishing us. By stripping her abusers of the unearned power and privilege they used as weapons, Sloane reclaims her narrative and protects her son from inheriting a generational curse of manipulation. Ultimately, the story demonstrates that success and independence are the best responses to betrayal. You don't have to set yourself on fire to keep toxic people warm. You have the absolute right to construct your own empire, surround yourself with genuine love, and leave those who seek to destroy you behind. Step into your truth today and fiercely protect your inner peace from anyone who threatens it.